On my left, we have Prashant Jha, as a journalist and author. He's written The Battles of the New Republic, A Contemporary History of Nepal, and his most recent book, which he'll speak about tonight, is How the BJP Win. He's an associate editor at the Hindustan Times and writes on Indian politics and foreign policy. And on the other side of him is Shivam Vij, the deputy editor of HuffPost India. He's written and commented on Indian politics for many years and has written for a number of international publications as well. So I'd like to thank both of them for coming out and agreeing to be on this little panel. The topic tonight is, will what's happening in the economy hurt the BJP politically? Narendra Modi came to power in 2014 promising jobs and development. We all know that. Ordinary Indians, Indian industrialists, foreign investors, everyone hoped he could transform India. 3 years later, the story is obviously very complicated. India was until recently the fastest growing major economy. There have been reforms, and from the bankruptcy code to GST. But there's a broad consensus among economists that demonetization and the rollout of the nationwide tax helped drag down economic growth from about 7.9% last year around this time to 5.7%. Recently, which was the slowest pace of economic expansion since Modi took office in 2014. A lot of people suggest that's going to pick up, so it's not totally grim, but we're likely to see slower growth for the next year. And so as Modi gears up for elections in Gujarat and also Himachal Pradesh, and also ahead of the 2019 elections, we thought we would get Prashant with his new book out, and Shivam, to provide a little bit of context for our members on how they feel things are going to go, even if we're not making solid predictions. We could just say Gujarat, BJP, 2019, BJP, and sort of be done with it. But I think it's a lot more interesting that there's a lot of different dynamics, and hopefully we'll get into some of those tonight. So maybe if we can just start off, I'd like to ask Prashant, you just wrote this excellent new book, and I'm wondering if you can just explain to people maybe who haven't read the book in its entirety, why you think the BJP has been so successful since 2014, and if you think what's happening with the economy will have any impact on the electoral success that you've written so eloquently about.
Thank you, Ian, for having us. And I've always been coming to FCC, but I never participated in a discussion of this sort. So I'm also happy to see FCC revive into a forum for discussion and conversations like these. To answer your first question, I've been covering elections in India for the last few years. I covered the 14 elections, spent some time in Bihar, but UP was an immersive experience, was on the ground for months. And that made me approach this project and approach this question. I think there are 4 or 5 strands to the BJP's success, and we can identify that separately. The first is, of course, the Prime Minister's image. You mentioned that in 2014 he won because he promised jobs and development. I think the Prime Minister has consciously reinvented himself over the past decade and a half. If he started out as a Hindu Hriday Samrat, a Hindu leader between 2002 and 2007, a strong Hindu leader, he became a development man post 2007 to 2014, while retaining that image of a Hindu leader as well. And it was on the basis of these twin images that the 2014 verdict happened. What we have seen over the past 2 years is a third underappreciated image reinvention of the Prime Minister, where he has also become a messiah of the poor, a Garibo ka Neta, that's the word in Hindi. And if you look at his speeches, there is a lot of emphasis now on rural India, on poor Indians, and on agriculture, for instance, right, on poor farmers. Now, that is a conscious image reinvention that happened because in 2015 they lost Delhi, they lost Bihar, and there was a perception that the government and the BJP would be again seen as a party of the well-to-do, as a party of urban India, as a party of the section of the upper middle class and corporates. And that was an image trap they wanted to get out of. Through the narrative on demonetization and through sharper welfare delivery, I think the Prime Minister was able to carve out a multi-class appeal and a multi-class alliance on the basis of this third image reinvention. Right. The second strand to their success is Amit Shah's organizational work. BJP today is the most formidable election apparatus, has the most formidable election apparatus that any national party has had in India at any point. Because Congress is a mass-based party. Congress has never relied so much on organizational power. You have had regional variants, say the left in West Bengal, certain Dravidian parties in Tamil Nadu, who have had strong organizations. aspirations. BJP today at the national level is a formidable machine, and this has many components to it. Quantitative expansion of the membership base, where the BJP claims it's the world's largest party, larger than the Chinese Communist Party, to qualitative change in the relationship between the party high command and the party grassroots, a lot of focus on booth level management and activating booth committees, frequent mass contact, propaganda, blitzkrieg, resource mobilization on an unprecedented scale, which is then used to strengthen the party again. So that, I think, that's the second component, Amit Shah's organizational skills. The third is that while BJP used to be primarily an upper caste party, today one could argue that BJP is a somewhat more inclusive Hindu party. It remains a Hindu party, but it has made a conscious attempt to attract the subaltern within the Hindu fold. Specific OBC subcaste, backward subcaste, specific Dalit subcaste who may not have enjoyed some of the political benefits and opportunities that have come through democratization to some within their community. And BJP has been able to carve out again this multi-caste coalition along with the multi-class coalition. Then you have the role of the RSS and the organizational support that the Sangh is able to provide. And today we see a pretty high degree of convergence between the Sangh, which is the ideological parent of the BJP, as we know, a source of their worldview, a source of their personnel, and the BJP government. And this works on the ground because then Sangh is able to deploy its network of pracharaks, the full-time volunteers, as well as its network of sympathizers to build opinion for the BJP and to mobilize voters on the ground on the final day, on the polling day, right? And finally, of course, you have this strong element of communal polarization. BJP is a party that stokes hatred on the ground. BJP is a party that uses deception, that uses lies, that uses propaganda to make the Hindu voter angry, to make the Hindu voter bitter, to make the Hindu voter resentful of the Muslims, to make the Hindu voter resentful of all other parties and portray them as sympathetic to only Muslim interests. And through this, they are able to construct a majority vote. The reason they succeed is because secularism is dead. There is no resonance of secularism on the ground anymore. And you do not hear Hindu voters, even voters of non-BJP parties, think about secularism as a primary determinant of their voting choice. So I think these are the key components of BJP's success in the Hindi heartland, particularly in Northwest and Central India. We also see them adopt other tools, other techniques, co-option of existing political elites, diluting their ideological core, adapting to specific realities as they expand beyond the heartland in places like Northeast India. Will this last? I am not suggesting that they are invincible. I do think that the slowdown in growth has affected them. Whether it will have electoral consequences will have to be seen, but I think it does make them vulnerable. It makes them vulnerable because if you go back to my first point, Modi's multi-class alliance rests on growth, it rests on jobs, and it rests on welfare. To cater to different elements of that multi-class base, right? So, and if the government is not able to deliver on even one of these three, then they are suddenly going to see challenges. And we have seen this the drop or the slip in the narrative from the perspective of the government over the past few months. It is because of the GDP data, of the demonetization consequences, economically adverse consequences of demonetization, which are now coming home to roost, the unhappiness over GST. So I think it's too early to suggest that this is the end of the road for the BJP and the BJP's moment of dominance is over. I think BJP remains India's hegemonic party. It is in power in 18 states. But this is not an invincible machine, and the economic, we will have a longer discussion on it, and the economic narrative will hurt the party.
Thanks for that. Let's move over to Shivam. Shivam, the recent criticism we've heard of the economic record has been coming from some surprising quarters. And I think when Yashwant Sinha came out with his sort of fiery op-ed in the Indian Express, it gave maybe some credence to some of the things that had been coming mainly from usual suspects over the past little bit. Do you think that it's significant that this type of criticism is coming from people who would be considered within the fold of the party? And do you think that is do you think that's a significant moment given the sort of sheer popularity that Modi has enjoyed over the past 3 years?
Ordinarily, I think criticism from Yashwant Sinha and Arun Shourie should make no impact, because it is well known that they are disgruntled people in the BJP, no matter how respected they are or they were. But fact is, they are speaking what they are saying because they didn't get a share of power. Um, which begs the question, why did Yashwant Sinha's piece make such an impact? It did so because the Congress party has not been able to make, or the opposition in general, has not been able to make any impact in its criticism of the government, and the Indian media has largely become a mouthpiece of the government. In such a scenario, it is the veterans of the BJP who are getting attention because, and also partly, unlike the Congress, they know how to use words. They know how to write an op-ed that makes an impact. They know how to use the media. They know how to give interviews, which Rahul Gandhi shies away from. I think one very big point that Prashant missed in how BJP wins is the Congress. The BJP is winning. The BJP looks very big. I mean, I buy everything he says about, caste, Hindutva, economy, party organization, and so on. But when the BJP meets a strong challenger, as it happens regionally, Nitish and Lalu come in together in Bihar, or Arvind Kejriwal in Delhi, both in 2015, we saw that the BJP is not invincible. But the BJP looks almost invincible, regardless of what goes wrong or right, when its opponent is the Congress party. And that is also what makes people like Yashwant Sinha shine. In fact, while the last few days and weeks, Rahul Gandhi is looking better, but actually there's such a vacuum of opposition that anybody, including people in this room, can make a lot of impact in criticizing the government.
Can we seize back on that point? I mean, do you think that what's happening in the economy right now is providing some wind into the sails of Congress or political opposition that just hasn't existed in the past 3 years?
Sure, but as far as the Congress and the opposition are concerned, the economy and the economic growth rate is only one factor, and I wonder how much of this obsession with the growth figures is actually an obsession of the urban elites only. The Congress is looking better also because Nitish Kumar has practically committed political suicide. Arvind Kejriwal has decided to take it easy for a while. So there is absolutely nobody, and suddenly the Congress party and Rahul Gandhi don't look that bad. Having said that, they've also stepped up their game, I think. Rahul Gandhi decided to make a stronger pitch for power himself. But on the economy, we obsess about GST and demonetization and the growth figures. Perhaps the biggest economic impact is that of the agriculture policy of this government, not raising the minimum support prices for farmers. The farm distress, rural distress is, I think, the greater challenge to this government than GST. Because the masses, Prashant rightly said, they've been trying to become a party of the poor. The poor voter of the BJP, the new voter, the new constituency that Modi is trying to target, the BJP has consciously decided we don't need the traders anymore. The rhetoric, more than the actual policies of demonetization GST, I found traders upset about the rhetoric of anti-rich, as if everybody who's a businessman, everybody who has money is a thief. That's the kind of language I've heard on the ground. But the BJP has decided to forsake them anyway, like if they're 5% in number at most, half of them will still vote for us because they are communal or they can't vote for Congress, they don't have options. Half of them will not vote, they'll sit at home, they'll vote for Congress, fine. But the poor voter, if the poor voter is also unhappy with your economic policy, when, if you actually look at farmer suicides, rural distress, it feels like 2005-06 when there was a lot of it and the news coming out and things like NREGA and farm loan waivers then came in to alleviate it. But this government is very clear that it resists as much as possible any doles, while state governments do give some of those, but the central government doesn't want to give a farm loan waiver, for instance.
Prashant, do you think you could maybe talk a little bit about farm loan waivers and the pressure that when they came into power in UP, that was one of the promises, and UP announced one. That put pressure on other BJP states, and some have come through, but others haven't. Is this an issue, especially given what's happening with farmers in the country? Is this an issue that could be is this one of those economic issues that might actually have some sort of impact in the countryside, or do these things not particularly tend to sway votes?
I think they are important. If you look at why the farm loan waiver was promised in the first place in UP, the sense that we got while reporting was that Rahul Gandhi did a march with this demand, but then, like many things that Rahul Gandhi does, he did not sustain it, and he disappeared after that. But that demand stuck, and there were independent agencies that the BJP commissioned and asked to get feedback from the ground on the issues that resonate with the electorate. And one of the big issues was farm loan waiver. And the state unit recognized, and these polls suggested, that it would make a difference of almost 3 percentage point in the vote share. And this is when Amit Shah went to the Prime Minister and said, we have to do this. Now, this is something that the Prime Minister usually has disdain for. This is the kind of, dole politics that he mocked the UPA for, right? And he said that his approach to welfare would be empowering people and not giving out these doles. But when they figured that this is going to have electoral implications, they did promise this. Now, I don't think we can say that it does not make a difference. And you're right, this has sparked this. There's been a domino effect. It has sparked similar demands from other groups. Now, but is it the one issue that can completely change the political game? And that's doubtful as well, because farmers, as we know, are not a homogeneous unit. Farmers are divided. They have common economic interests maybe, but we also know that they're very heterogeneous. Different regions have completely different dynamics. They're divided by caste. They're divided by class. So the poor farmer, the landless laborer, the small and marginal farmer, the rich farmer, they have different interests as well. So I think Shivam has a point that rural distress is going to be an important issue. I think BJP is aware of the power of this vote, especially as it seeks to expand and become a party of also rural India and of farmers and the poor. And at the same time, I think it would be a little premature to say that this is the one thing that will sway the game.
Yeah. If I can just take on from that, I think if we go back to 2004, the last time the BJP was in power at the center, and they ran an India Shining campaign, and the opposition question was, Aam Aadmi ko kya mila? What did the common man get? Now, regardless of what Modi's slogan in 2019 may be, and we know what it'll be basically that a lot of work is left, and Modi believes in showing a continuing journey. He's already announced 2022 as the year of delivering stuff, so that questions are not asked in 2019, but questions will be asked. And the voter will ask, you forget the opposition, the media, but the voter will ask himself, what did I get? What did we get? And if you can't deliver jobs, you don't want to give them relief in the, you're stifling NREGA by delaying payments and forcing rural labor to migrate to the city anyway. You are not raising the minimum support prices for farmers. So the voter is going to ask, what did I get? People want something tangible in their hands to see, right? They don't want abstract notions such as black money is being fought or India becoming cleaner. These abstract notions can last only so long. At some point, maybe not in the Gujarat election, maybe not in 2019, but at some point the voter is going to ask, what did I get? And I think the government and the Prime Minister is very conscious of that, and they keep trying stuff. If you look at why they are so big in publicizing the LPG scheme, is to show that people are getting something tangible in their hands, like or a gas cylinder. But that's not enough. I think they need to deliver something tangible. If people want money in their pockets, you give them a bank account. And the number of people on the ground who expect even today money to just drop into those Jan Dhan accounts is astounding.
Wheat and pulses have been raised.
Recently, but I believe marginally. Right.
It has been raised.
Yeah, not substantially.
I think to just take on from there about what the BJP will go in to 2019 with. I think there are four themes that we can identify. One is going to be nationalism and a party of strong India, right? And they will use, say, the surgical strike or standing up to China and instances of that in the campaign, right? The second is going to be a degree of Hindu consolidation. And you see the instances around cow protection, which have descended into outright crime, but also Ayodhya. The temple is up for, the issue around the temple is up for hearing in the Supreme Court, and let's see how that goes over the next year. This is again something that they will try to at least consolidate Hindus around in the heartland in North India, particularly over the next year and a half. The third is going to be clean government. We still have to see how much the controversy and allegations around Jai Shah sticks to the BJP, but we know that one of the things, I was traveling in Bihar a month ago, and when I was asking voters precisely this, what do you think about Modi? They said, no, he's a good man. And what has he done? And they did not have many tangible things to offer. But one of the things that they said was, gandagi saaf kar rahe hain, which means that he's cleaning up the dirt. So clean government, which is cleaning up past dirt, and therefore needs more time to deliver on the foundations that have been, to build on the foundations that have been needed. And the fourth is welfare, and that is where the tangibles come in. On welfare, I think they will talk about LPG, as Shivam mentioned. They will talk about bank accounts. They will talk about toilets as a part of Swachh Bharat, and they will talk about power. And, the policy announcement was that they would electrify all the unelectrified villages, which were 18,000 villages. Now, we know that electrification of villages you can claim that villages are electrified only if you just have one pole in a village and 10% of the households have a connection, right? But if you see Modi's speech from 3 weeks ago, he has said that all households will be electrified by the end of 2018. That's a really ambitious target. I don't know whether he will succeed. But if they are able to achieve a degree of success on that front, I think that's another thing that they will go with. Whether it's enough is
Do you think, I mean, given all you've mentioned about clean government, the shift to sort of anti-corruption narratives from sort of economic reform narratives, do you think there's been a shift away from the sort of development man of Modi and more towards a sort of anti-corruption platform, or are those one and the same? Are they different? I mean,
I think the integrity platform was a strong platform even in 2014. Remember, this was a time when the corruption around Congress was a theme that he spoke about in every speech. Arvind Kejriwal did him great service by launching the anti-corruption movement from 2011 and making the country completely, aware of this, one would say, or if you're a skeptic, cynical of the Congress and the nature of the regime then, and BJP and Modi had the machine to take advantage of it. Even now, there is still a lot of faith in the integrity and the intent of the Prime Minister. And he is going to definitely play that integrity card, and he is going to package all that he has done, from demonetization to GST and the effort to formalize the economy as a part of this anti-corruption image.
I think that's a very interesting question, Ian, because corruption has always been an issue in Indian politics, and perhaps it means different things at different times. In 2011 onwards, the Lokpal movement, the Hazare movement, corruption perhaps stood in also for high inflation at the time, as one saw. Many surveys around 2014 showed that people's number one issue with UPA 2 was inflation and not corruption. But they're one and the same. A lot of people think that inflation is high because the government is corrupt. But today, Modi's anti-corruption, I think, stands in for anti-rich. Because anti-rich is pro-poor, I'm hurting the rich, and that's why they are making a noise, which is not what Modi said in 2014. In 2014, when Modi said Vikas and development, it was very much a line that the rich constituents liked. So I think we have all witnessed by now the change in our basically MBA corporate startup center right type friends who were very gung-ho about Modi in 2014, but today they're turning slowly, and some of them are like, how do we get rid of him?
Traditionally, which sort of economic issues have resonated at the ballot box? I mean, I was speaking to Yashwant Sinha a couple of weeks ago, I was saying earlier, and he kind of said, look, there's two main things. One is jobs, and the other is inflation. And right now, there's a bit of a jobs issue, but there's not really any significant inflation. So he was predicting, there may be some difficulty, but it's unlikely to have some major impact. Do you guys agree with that sort of analysis, that there's basically two big economic issues that really, really resonate at the polls, and other than that, say something more amorphous like bank recapitalization, or whether demonetization figures from the RBI were really showed it was really worth it in the end, et cetera. What's going to resonate in terms of economic issues, and how bad do you think it's going to have to get before there's some?
Shivam wrote an excellent piece on inflation, so I'll let him take that.
Well, my theory is that the only thing that matters in general elections is inflation, inflation, inflation. And there's some very interesting research that shows that somehow inflation goes up in the last 2 years of every central government. And I think Modi is conscious of that, and Modi's economic policy has been to control inflation. The reason why GST has been implemented in a hurry in the middle of the financial year is to give it time before 2019, since GST is known to drive up inflation a bit. They made historic changes in monetary policy to make inflation control the center of it. Demonetization brought down inflation because, you don't have economic activity, the inflation. I think jobs, how much do jobs really affect voter behavior? I don't know, because when people think jobs, they think government jobs. They don't think private jobs. Lack of creation of private jobs as a failure of the government, unlike, say, the US, is not really a linkage made directly here, and I might be completely wrong about this. But I think the lack of jobs is reflected, for instance, in widespread, often violent movements for changes in reservation policy across India, from Haryana to Karnataka. So jobs is an issue right now in Gujarat, not just because of GST, but the whole Patel issue is basically a jobs issue. It's articulating itself as a reservations issue. But people's inability to demand jobs directly means that they talk reservations, and that's where things get more interesting, because the Modi government is planning to bring in Mandal 2.0, which is that they want to divide the central OBC list into two parts, the lower OBCs and the dominant OBCs. And we've seen in many states how the BJP poll rises not just against Muslims, as Prashant said, but also against the dominant community, dominant upper caste or OBC community. In Haryana, they won an election impossibly by just polarizing everybody against Jats, in a state where, it is conventionally thought Jats rule, and you have to win with the Jats, and there'll be Jat CM, and there's a non-Jat CM. Similarly, in Gujarat, I think if they succeed, which most probably they will have succeeded despite alienating Patels, right? So the whole caste thing is the answer to jobs thing in a roundabout way, which is why I don't really think, unless the jobs crisis gets really much worse, that it's going to have a great impact, and Modi is going to be able to control inflation very well.
Just a brief supplement to that. I think job creation is something that many Indian citizens have just learned to, have limited expectations about, right? But the problem that this government is facing today is that there are actually job losses happening. It's not just a failure of not being able to create jobs. It's the fact that a certain set of policies have led to losses across industries. And this is affecting not just the upper middle class and middle class professionals entering the job market, but just labor. And that, I think, and that's the difference between a 7.9 and a 5.7 growth figure, right? So the growth figure itself is inconsequential beyond policy circles, but the real life impact is on precisely job losses. And I think if they are not able to, if you're going to continue to see, as you mentioned in the beginning, downward trajectory of the growth figure, or an inability to at least get it back to 7 in the next few quarters. And if that is going to mean a continued erosion of jobs, then I think it's something for the government to worry about. But I do think that one of the ways in which they will do it is take the narrative away from job losses to social engineering of the kind that Shivam talked about, and to the other 3-4 elements.
I think, just jobs could become, a really big issue. It could be the main issue in 2019, if only there is an opposition to do something like that. If the opposition continues to be unable to set the agenda, like, I was only for 3 days in Ahmedabad recently, but what I picked up was that there is a lot of unhappiness amongst people, but unhappiness to the extent that a lot of people say there's anger, in light of what's happened with the GST in Gujarat. But the Congress party is completely unable to set the agenda. It's the people are setting the agenda. It's people's movement. Hardik Patel, Jignesh Mewani, nothing from within the Congress party or any opposition for that matter, which is setting the agenda, leading the people. We've seen farmers' agitations and movements, again, not led or even exploited by any opposition party. So in absence of the opposition being able to do its job, the issues of jobs or anything may not become very big issues.
How do both of you think the signature policies of the government over the past couple of years, GST, demonetization, how has that gone down with the sort of traditional trader class that formed the sort of bulk of the BJP voting? There's obviously been protests from textile workers, in particular in Gujarat. How do you think it's gone down, and did it shake them? Did it shake their faith in the government? Did it,
when demonetization was announced, I was sitting with a friend in Lucknow, who's an entrepreneur, now leads a business chamber there, and he's a young businessman. We went to college together, and he said, "This is good. It'll force me to clean my practices." But I think he was an exception. I think the larger community was angry, and he kept telling me about this uncle of his who had 25 crores in cash stashed around, right? And over the next 50 days, he was managing this money. And every day, from morning to night, he was abusing Modi. And he was using casteist slurs against Modi and saying, "Look at this man, and he's destroyed us." And then when I asked him after the election, "Who did your uncle vote for?" He said, "BJP. And I said, "Why?" He said, "Who else would you vote for?" He said, "This is my party." So, there is anger. I don't think this base is happy at all. And I think this is and BJP has taken this base for granted and even calculated that, look, this base is demographically not important. So even if a section of this base moves away, we are going to offset that with the expansion that we are doing among the poor and so on. But I think there is also the sense that where will they go? They will be with us even if we... the absence of...
I think it's kind of intuitive to speak of GST and demonetization on the same breath, but actually they are very different. Demonetization was bad economics, good politics. GST is good economics, bad politics. Demonetization, I think, at the end of the day, was rather popular with, I wouldn't say popular, but the business community at the end of the day didn't mind it. Ultimately, their uncle voted for BJP because, I have similar stories of, friends who have relatives with lots of cash lying around. Somehow, just in my family, there was no cash lying around, sadly. But so I was sitting with this friend whose entire family is business family, and except for my friend, everybody else was a big Modi fan. And the family WhatsApp group on 8th November at 8 p.m. was like, "What has Modi done? What has Modi done?" And, abusing Modi started. But within a day or two, they were like, "Good for the country." And the change happened because in a day or two, they figured out how to manage their cash, right? So once you figure out how to manage the cash, once you figure out how to use this opportunity to convert your black into white, demonetization was good for the country. GST, however, is not good for the country. One trader I met recently in Gujarat told me, the problem with GST is not just that I'm unable to hide some of my business from my CA. It's not just that I have to now reveal everything to the CA and I can't do business in black. But the fact that I am now answerable to my CA who makes me wait for 30 minutes is like I have a job. I used to take pride in being a businessman, being self-employed. I wasn't, beholden to anybody. I didn't have a boss. I used to do business in cash. Now this whole system that is being forced upon me of banks and Aadhaar and GST and CA, I feel, the sense of pride is hurt. Along with job losses, along with, this, plus the double whammy of demonetization. People thought, okay, 1 quarter, 2 quarter, we'll recover from it. But then comes GST. So I think there is a problem, and these days also what has changed from the past is the speed with which information reaches the last voter, even the unlettered voters in the villages, thanks to a media explosion, means that the narrative of growth and economy not doing well and GST will perhaps reach people in a way that it didn't earlier. And I think the impact, as you said, we may not fully be able to predict.
Maybe we can go back to Gujarat for a few minutes. And both of you have traveled there. Both of you have spoken to people and done reporting there. The Hardik Patel movement itself was quite fascinating, and for several reasons, in that it kind of spoke to the jobs issue, but also it also speaks to the lack of opposition. When we were there and we met him, I was amazed to discover how young he was, and he can't actually even stand for office. And when we went, I was originally thinking this guy was probably going to form a party or do something, right? But he can't. But maybe can you guys just maybe talk a little bit about Gujarat and what kind of dynamics you see at play there since Modi's left, and whether it's as much of a bastion of sort of BJP might as it was when he was there.
So the last election Congress won on its own in Gujarat was 1985. The last election BJP lost in Gujarat was 1990. So this speaks of the kind of overwhelming dominance that BJP has enjoyed in Gujarat. From 98, they have been in power in an uninterrupted manner, right? What has changed this time? I think there are 3 or 4 issues. The first is that Modi is no longer chief minister, and this is the first election in over 15 years without Modi as chief minister. It has also therefore resulted in a turnover of chief ministers. You first had Anandiben Patel, who was not seen as very effective, failed to control the Patel agitation. More importantly, Una happened, and then she was removed, and she did not get along with the party president. Then you had Vijay Rupani, who is not known for charisma, and who is not really a patch on Modi, right? So one, you have that. The second is BJP's broad social coalition has fractured. Patels were an important part of that coalition, and Hardik's agitation reflects that fracture. And Fisher and BJP knows that they're not going to get that kind of support from the Patidar community as they did. The third is the anger that you see in a section of urban Gujarat among traders, among the original constituents against the economic policies of the BJP. And the fourth is you see a more energized opposition, and Rahul, I don't know whether he has gained traction beyond the Congress voters, but he has been, sustaining his campaign there and stitching up a coalition of disaffected leaders. Yet, having said all this, I think BJP still, has an advantage only because of the sheer weight of history, and also Modi. The Prime Minister's image, I think, remains formidable, and there is no match to him either at the national level or in the state itself, where Congress, remember, has no local face. And Modi is going to make this election his election. It's going to become an election about Gujarati pride. You have a Gujarati Prime Minister, and you're not going to vote for me, is going to be the rhetoric. I won't be surprised if Modi breaks down a couple of times in the next few weeks to remind the Gujarati voters of what they mean to him and what he means to them. The second is organization. What 20 years in power has done is helped BJP expand power substantially, right? So you use power to expand power, and BJP today has control over dairy cooperatives, it has control over the rural banking network, it has control over self-help groups, and its organization, both in terms of width and depth, is very, there's no match to it. There are 44,000 plus booths in Gujarat, and they have a strong booth management committee everywhere. They claim to have 700,000 workers who are in charge of each page of the electoral roll, who have been mandated with the task of getting voters out on polling day. Now, these figures may be exaggerated, but what we are looking at is a vibrant organization. to offset the Patel loss, they also are thinking about another kind of caste coalition, which will rely on upper castes, which will rely on a large section of OBCs. There are 37 to 40% OBCs in Gujarat, and among OBCs, the primary community are not the Thakurs, who we saw a leader of the Thakur community move to the Congress, but Kohlis. It is again perhaps not a coincidence that the president of the country is a Kohli. And I'm talking about Kovind here. And remember one of his first trips, I think it was his first trip outside as a Rashtrapati, was to Gujarat. The BJP also enjoys a substantial section of support from tribals, who constitute 15% of the population. Usually you have Dalits who constitute more than tribals in many parts of North India, but there you have 15% tribals and 7% Dalits. So and Congress is, as Shivam says, you don't only win. One side does not necessarily win an election, the other side has to lose the election. And Congress has a consistent track record since 1985 of losing elections in Gujarat. So it is an interesting battle to watch also, because it's a bipolar polity. And, and the difference we saw in 2012 was a 9% vote share difference. So Congress has got over 10 million votes in Gujarat. So when you see rallies which are crowded, it's not surprising. This is a party which has a base there. So it'll be an interesting contest to watch. But I mean,
I think the BJP in Gujarat, but also nationally, it's begun to feel that way. Feels like the left rule in Bengal for 35 years, where winning elections is almost like an automatic process. It depends on managing people, on manipulation, on keeping the opposition weak, on everything, but it's detached. The process of winning elections is detached from governance, from economy, from actually being popular with the people. It is possible that, somewhat like UP, it might appear this election season in Gujarat, the BJP is very unpopular. There might be people who might start saying that the Congress is actually winning, right? And yet the BJP might win like 125 seats. Because that kind of thing is happening because the election winning idea is not really based on the government's popularity. The standard idea of anti-incumbency doesn't apply to the BJP in Gujarat and in increasingly many places, because election winning is about this innovative social engineering, great party organization, so on and so forth. So, I was in Ahmedabad recently, and the word I heard for the BJP a lot was anger. There's anger amongst people. And yet the most anti-BJP people, super angry, Patels, abusing. At the end of the day, BJP will win. Because why? Because it just wins.
Can I just add two things to that? One is, taking off from that last point, projecting the inevitability of victory is half the battle won in Indian elections. That's how waves are created. Because the Indian voter does not want to be seen as voting for the losing side. That they think is a wasted vote, right? So as soon as BJP has very successfully projected this image, and maybe some of us in the media are also complicit in projecting this thing that we are going to win anyway. And if you're going to win
the party
anyway,
says we are targeting 150 seats, the voter says, 150 means they'll get at least 100, right? So that means they're winning.
And the second is that, if you look at the 2012 vote share, then there is a difference of about 9 percentage point between Congress and BJP. But if you go to the 2014 elections, the BJP got almost 58-59% of the vote share, right? And so even if BJP drops 10 to 12% of the vote share that it got in 2014, it's still winning comfortably. So it has a cushion which is substantial. Now, which frame should you use? The assembly election or the Lok Sabha election is a question that we grappled with a lot in UP when we were traveling, because in 2012, the BJP actually got only 15% in UP, but in 2014, it ended up getting 40% almost, and in 2017, it retained its Lok Sabha vote share. So I don't know which frame is a better comparative frame, but that's something to just think about.
I just want to open it up to questions. I think one over here. Oh, I think we have a mic, so just if you want to wait 2 seconds.
My question is, let us look at the opposition. Hardik Patel is there. Congress is there. Is there any chance of Hardik Patel and Congress coming together? If they come together, what would be the consequences? Will BJP have a chance of saying that the Hardik Patel's agitation was engineered by the Congress? Will it turn negative or will it turn positive?
No, I think Hardik Patel is already with the Congress for all practical intents and purposes. Hardik Patel's influence is going to decide a few Patel tickets in the Congress party. I think that's their understanding between them. Alpesh Thakur is even more with them. It will boil down to ticket distribution. It will boil down to ticket distribution. It will boil down to, does the Congress give a lot of tickets to Hardik Patel's chosen people, and does that backfire? Would they be, young, inexperienced politicians, and so on and so forth? The Congress game, in the absence of a chief ministerial candidate, which would have benefited them, is now all about ticket distribution, which they historically mess up. Like ordinary people in Gujarat would tell you the Congress would do much better were it not for bad ticket distribution.
Yeah, I agree with Shivam. I think Hardik is already with Congress. When I met him last in April or May, he said that, look, the Congress symbol is suicide, so I'm not going to formally join the Congress, but I'm going to transfer all my votes to the Congress. And I think this trying to be secretive is just immature politics. But the reason for this dilemma is what you pointed out, that there is the Patels have traditionally not liked the Congress. And it is the reason why the Prime Minister threw this thing about how Congress has been unjust to Gujaratis and mentioned Sardar Patel, was also to strike a note with the Patidars, right? And so he does not want to be seen as too closely identified, but I think he will have to reveal his cards sooner than later. And the second reason is also because Alpesh Thakur is now formally with Congress, and there is a contradiction there, right? Because Thakur's movement, OBC movement, it was against the Patidar movement because they did not want reservations for Patidars, right? So it will be difficult for him to be seen as sharing the stage with an Alpesh and with the contradictory demands that they represent. So I think there are a few reasons why he has not come out publicly, but I agree that I think he's going to be with Congress. Now, if you go by the India Today poll yesterday, and I know Shivam is very skeptical of these polls, but just as something that I'm throwing out, is that they suggest that Hardik commands about 2 percentage point, and if Hardik formally goes with the Congress, it will result in a spike in Congress vote share from 38 to 40. Patels dominate about 21 seats out of 182, and so it may have an impact in a section of those 21 seats depending on the ticket distribution that happens. I mean, I just threw that out because we don't have other empirical data yet, and once we start traveling, maybe we'll have more reports too.
Patels are very interesting. They are very communal, like a lot of people in Gujarat. So this one particular engineer I met said voting for the Congress, which is the father of Muslims, is like destroying one eye of yourself. However, this time I will destroy one of my eyes because I want to destroy the BJP's 2 eyes. Okay? And this language, and this is like Patel after Patel speaks like that. It's not about Hardik, it's not about reservations. It's just, for Patel farmers, it's about farming issues. Potatoes are rotting and unable to sell them. For more educated Patels, it's about reservations. For somebody else, it's just about Anandiben was insulted and Nitin Patel was not made CM. And then this guy said, Anandiben was insulted, Nitin was not made CM, and then a Bania was made CM. So, that's when I realized that Banias are not very well liked community within Gujarat, and both Amit Shah and his man Rupani are Banias. At the same time, I did meet Patels who said, no, I'm with BJP, I was always BJP. So the Patel split, the Patel benefit to Congress may be marginal, but the greater benefit of the Patel agitation and movement might simply be to help create a sense that the BJP is in trouble and therefore drive some more voters, even non-Patel voters, to Congress.
Yeah. Michael, over there.
Thanks, Sam. I'm interested in understanding the way that this Hindu consolidation factor works. Is it sort of a bottomless pit that the government can continue to ramp up and win more votes by doing so? Or does history suggest that there's a limit? There's a point at which once they cross, they begin to turn voters off. How should we imagine that? How does that work?
You know, I think you just have to see it as a part of a continuum where this project began in some ways 92 years ago, right, with the founding of the RSS, and with the explicit objective of organizing and uniting Hindu society. Now, electorally, we have seen BJP sharpen the rhetoric, dilute the rhetoric, depending on the state, depending on circumstances. But I think there has always been a constant search for new issues, new narratives, which feeds into both the sense that this is a Hindu country and a sense of victimhood, and that Hindus have not got their fair share, and others have only pandered to minorities. Now, you can do that through Babri Masjid, you can do that through Love Jihad, you can do that through claiming that electricity was distributed during Eid and not during Diwali. You can do that by alleging that laptops were distributed on the basis of religion. You can do that by suggesting that Muslim gangsters threw out Hindu villagers and led to forced migration of Hindus from parts of West UP. So the issues may keep changing, and I think, or you can do that by suggesting or projecting the image of the Muslim as the butcher, slaughtering cows at every street corner. I mean, I think the issues may keep changing, but the larger narrative, the larger objective is constructing that vote, or unifying that society, Hindu society, across caste lines, and and we've seen that constant reinvention of issues for that objective. Now, I don't know whether we can quantify and have a tangible, answer to whether there is a certain point at which the law of diminishing returns sets in. But if I can just
talking of quantifying, sure.
No, just the final point was, I think where it was a limited project was when BJP attempted to do Hindu consolidation based primarily on the upper castes. I think the change is that BJP today is being able to attract a large section of the lower castes by catering to their specific interests while bringing them within the larger Hindu fold. So this is why today's project is far more successful, and it's also expanded on this scale. But sorry, go ahead.
I think before 2014, we saw that the BJP's core vote is around 18-20% nationally. So presuming that is a Hindutva vote, the addition that we saw in 2014, one could say, was the vote for Vikas, the vote against Congress, and so on. Now, how much is the core Hindutva vote base expanding is something, we cannot tell today. We'll need the benefit of hindsight to say that 20, 30 years from now, perhaps. However, I do think that the 2009 election was very interesting on this, where just 6 months before the election, 26/11 happened. Advani fought the election on the issue of national security. The face of that election was Afzal Guru, the Muslim that the Congress was not hanging because it was a pro-Muslim, Muslim-appeasing party, and yet the BJP lost very badly. I think Hindutva matters to a lot of Hindu voters. I think Hindutva has its appeal and its charisma, and perhaps it's expanding. I think similarly nationalism is important. It matters to voters. But none of these things can trump the issue of how much money is there in my pocket. If, for instance, we were to suddenly have 10% inflation in 2019, then I don't think Hindutva or nationalism will be able to save the BJP.
We have a question here.
Yeah, I kind of want to come back to what you talked about, which is, the latest BJP or Modi slogan to go for the poor vote bank. And I think this is the final journey towards 2019. And would you agree with me on that? Because Congress has had this slogan forever, Garibi Hatao. And this is Modi's counter to that, because he's never really appealed in the past to that vote bank. And will this enable him, in the context of what both of you have said, about appeasing this poor people or the vote bank, and thereby all the vikas and whatever is going on, and I think I would also segue a little bit in my question to what both of you have talked about. Look, they're going gung-ho with infrastructure development, whether it's highways, ports, building this, building airports, which is going to generate a lot of employment in infrastructure development. It already is. They're spending lakhs and lakhs of crores of rupees, whether it's the railways. Why do you think Piyush Goyal has been brought into railways and Nitin Gadkari continues with expanded task, waterways? So do you think these two factors will help him in the 2019 elections? That's one. And two, I don't quite see the Ayodhya issue dying off. Do you think that by next year, this time, it will become a major issue?
On the second question, yes, I do think it will become a major issue because you'll be having hearings in the Supreme Court and you will probably be heading towards a judgment. So it will be an issue. On your first question, yes, again, on the fact that Modi is expanding his base, and that is the big unprecedented shift that is happening in BJP. The reason why BJP was stuck to that 18-19 core vote was because it was never able to appeal to this larger class of poor voters, which constitutes the bigger demographic in India. The BJP, even at its peak before 2014, never had a vote share more than that of the Congress. Congress at its lowest had a greater vote share than the BJP, right? And that is what changed in 2014, and that was with the entry of the poor voters, and which now they are consciously trying to sustain and expand. Now, so that's definitely going to be one of the key things that he will go in to 19 with. On your infrastructure thing, again, I'm not an economist, but the sense clearly is that while there is public investment and the recapitalization and all the plans that were announced yesterday will maybe increase the investment cycle and revive sentiment. I mean, the question is of gestation period. I mean, how long will it take? Will we see returns, or will we see this job creation happening on the scale that is required before 19? As a result of what was announced yesterday. So
I'm sorry, what was the first question?
My first question was Modi appealing to the poor.
Right, right.
That they've missed out in the past. And it's basically a direct target at Congress. Because Congress
Right, Garibi Hatao, right. Right. Well, Garibi Hatao, Modi's totally copied Garibi Hatao in the way he's, projected demonetization. And the moment demonetization happened, it became part of a larger project for Modi, which was, let's say, Garibi Hatao 2. Demonetization failed, demonetization has been forgotten, but that project has remained of Garibi Hatao, which is, which makes sense because it succeeded that way, but also it's consistent. Modi is consistently giving us some narrative. What happened with Garibi Hatao in Indira Gandhi's time is very interesting. You know what happened? Indira Gandhi said Garibi Hatao, she won the election. Then the people realized they've been fooled. Poverty was not removed. In fact, the joke was that Garibi Hatao turned into Garib Hatao, remove the poor, not poverty, right? With all the slum demolitions and so on. Then, thereafter, people realized that they are not actually getting anything. The economy was not going anywhere. Jobs weren't to be had. And popular agitation started across India. The opposition didn't exist. But people's agitation started across India, which then coalesced into the JP movement, into rail strikes and so on. And that led to the emergency. Now, how much of that history is going to be repeated, I don't know. I hope not. To answer your question about infrastructure, I think people want tangible development in their pockets. The infrastructure does not result in votes. We saw that with Vajpayee in 2004, who built the Golden Quadrilateral. We saw that with Akhilesh Yadav, making his Agra Expressway one of the biggest things about his achievement. It did not result in votes. And Modi really understands this. Somebody told me, one second, somebody told me something that Modi did before the 2012 elections in Gujarat. Modi said, the thing about justice should not only be done but seem to be done. Development in politics should not only be done but seen to be done. So Modi, before 2012, he said in every district in Gujarat, like districts across India, district towns are like small strips of highways, 5 kilometer max strip of highway, Around that is the bazaar and the DM's office and the offices of other government institutions, and the important people of the town live there. This, the Kacheri, this 5 kilometer strip, the district town, Modi said, let's make this shine. So in every Gujarat district, he made this part shine. You can't make everything shine in one go. We're a poor country. We don't have only that much money. But let's make this shine so that, because this is where everybody from the district will be coming and going all the time, and they will say, oh, look how the district is shining, look how the bazaar, look how the road is looking, right? The highway on which the poor is not traveling will not fetch votes, but this will fetch votes. And Modi has done something very similar in this government, where they had a plan. I don't know where it's going, because like all their ambitious plans, they take forever to deliver, but they've planned to do up 400 railway stations across India and make them look dazzling new. So there may be as many rail accidents as possible, but it's visible development. When you go to the railway station and suddenly it looks 21st century, you'll be like, wow, this is what Modi has done. And I think visible development is what infrastructure does not really deliver. Third question was Ayodhya. Ayodhya, in 2012 elections in UP, in Phulpur near Allahabad, which used to be Nehru's constituency, I asked a BJP worker, why has the BJP declined in UP? And he was very clear, the BJP is not going to win this election. It was the UP Assembly election 2012. And he said, declined because people felt we cheated them over Ram Mandir. We promised us something and then we totally forgot it. Again, lack of consistency in the political narrative. So Modi is not really offering Ayodhya. They're just doing symbolism over it. There'll be the courts doing their stuff. Modi, I'm not doing Ayodhya. So it's like a side small issue. Second reason he said the BJP declined in UP is because it couldn't play the caste game very well. Played it for a while and then it got sidetracked and became an upper caste party again. So I asked him, and this is 2012, Feb, March. I asked him, what should the BJP do to revive itself in UP? And he said, bring Modi. I said, what will that achieve? He said, that will polarize the electorate. The issue will be you are with Modi or against Modi, just as back then you were either with Ram or against Ram, right? And he was so right. We saw this happen in 2014. Modi became the main political narrative. Are you with Modi or against Modi? And in fact, there are these Modi memes that I've seen circulating on WhatsApp. It's a photo of Modi in a Gujarati dress, and it says, are you with me? So what is the polarizing issue of 2019? Are you with me? Are you not with me? Will it be Ayodhya? Will it be infrastructure? I don't know. Let's not underestimate Modi's ability to come up with something really new tomorrow morning.
I think we have a question over here.
Just a small addition to what you're saying. I think the biggest advantage for BJP is the inconsistent Rahul Gandhi. Wherever there is a consistent opposition, for example, in Kejriwal has been consistent, Nitish Kumar has been consistent in Bihar, BJP has really had problems. And this is quite clear. He is just going there and going to some mandirs, then he's saying the GST as a Gabbar Singh tax. It's quite a joke. So, I mean, in such situation, do you really think the Congress can consolidate people behind them in Gujarat?
No. And the Congress party is there. It's an NGO. It's not a political party. I asked somebody, was there more anti-incumbency against the BJP in Gujarat in 2012 or now? Because, you forget the past, but in 2012 also a lot of people thought Modi is not popular and there are issues. And I was told, isn't it obvious that every 5 years the anti-incumbency increases? Every 5 years people become more and more impatient. What have you done? What have you done? And yet the Congress is not able to exploit it election after election. This is the Congress party has lost some 12, 14 MLAs to the BJP this year. A year where, if the political wind is against the BJP MLA should have been joining the Congress. They've lost Waghela, who could have been a CM candidate. He would have outshone Vijay Rupani, right? had you made it a Waghela versus Rupani fight, you would have had a very good chance because, Rupani is nobody. But now you're making sure it's a Rahul Gandhi versus Narendra Modi fight where Narendra Modi will easily outshine Rahul Gandhi. So Congress, people say they're not doing as badly. The other issue with Congress in Gujarat is that in UP, Bihar, secular parties are called pro-Muslim. In Congress, in Gujarat, they're called anti-Hindu. So Gujarat is like another level of communal. Congress has a anti-Hindu image, which they've been trying to change with Rahul Gandhi going to temples, except that he doesn't really have the body language of Modi to appear like a good Hindu. I think Priyanka would do that job better, but she's a victim of patriarchy. And I think Ahmed Patel, if your biggest political figure from Gujarat is a Muslim, it really doesn't help you shed your anti-Hindu image. Now, that may be sad, but there are people within the Congress in Gujarat who feel that Ahmed Patel should really be kept away. One, for the anti-Hindu image, and two, because what has Ahmed Patel delivered all these years? He's responsible for a lot of the bad ticket distribution.
We've crept up on about an hour, so I think I'm just going to maybe ask one more quick question, which kind of plays on Manishi's question from earlier, which was what more can we expect? I mean, there was rumors floating around about 2 weeks ago about stimulus. There's going to be some huge announcement. It was crores of rupees were going to flow. There's going to be all sorts of infrastructure stuff. Slowly over the past couple of weeks, we've seen there's been a bit of bank recapitalization stuff. They're trying to finally do something on MPAs. Which may pick up private investment in a couple of years or something. We have infrastructure. Some of this stuff is funded by bonds, so it's not exactly a fresh injection of cash. What more can we expect politically and economically from the BJP in terms of policies, in terms of announcements, in terms of things that they might be considering ahead of 2019 to try and get things back on track or keep things going?
An early rule in this government was, you never know what to expect, right? So the only two people who know what's going to happen tomorrow morning, as Shivam said, are Narendra Modi and Amit Shah. I think the big move, so it's very difficult to anticipate what they will do next, but I don't think that they now have the room to do another big economic announcement after what they did yesterday. Yesterday was huge, right? I mean, and I don't think there is room for stimulus anymore. I mean, this is the stimulus, and this is what they will hope to, they hope that this will start showing results by the end of next year so that they have something tangible to go with in 19. I think what they will probably do is now just consolidate and see, one of the things that this government has done is burdened the entire system with schemes. Every ministry has these 3 new schemes, right? Or reinvention of old schemes. I think they've just decided to narrow down on the 4 or 5 big ticket items which will resonate with the electorate, which is what Ujjwala did in UP, which is what Power may do. So just focus on that. Focus on the social engineering, the subcategorization of OBCs that Shivam mentioned, and ensure that in every state you are able to carve out these wider coalitions of both the upper castes as well as the backwards. And try to win out of the 6 big elections in the next year. These are all 6 have a straight Congress BJP face-off. Gujarat, Himachal, Karnataka, and then MP, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh. Those 3 elections also are going to be challenging elections for BJP because there is incumbency that they have to fight against. So out of the 6, ensure that you win 4. I think that's going to be the next year in BJP. But one cannot take.
So predicting anything about this government is a hazardous job. What they will do, I don't know. Having said that, let me take the risk and say, I think one thing they're going to do is put a lot of opposition leaders in jail on corruption charges, starting with Lalu Yadav. In 2018, we should expect some 7-8 big arrests happening. It could be Robert Vadra and Shashi Tharoor. If not arrest, certainly a lot more cases and litigation and raid raj, which is already going on. The purpose of that is for Modi to, apart from scaring opposition leaders, apart from making them sit down, which some of them have been doing, by the way, some of them have been lying low because let's not take on Modi, he'll send corruption cases my way, and nobody wants to go to jail like Lalu Yadav did, because today's politicians, unlike the politicians of the past, are used to 5-star privileges. They really can't survive a night in jail. Apart from that, by doing these corruption cases against these leaders, Modi wants to, the voter to be able to say, fine, maybe Modi couldn't deliver much, but look at the opposition, they are corrupt. At least Modi is not corrupt. He's highlighting that contrast with these raids, tax raids, corruption cases, and the arrests that I think will follow. The second thing that will definitely happen, I think Modi's plan A was always the economy, which is kind of bombed for a variety of reasons, including, but not only, demonetization and the GST shock. Plan B, therefore, it follows, has to be Hindutva. I think it's not coincidental that Yogi Adityanath was appointed after the failure of demonetization. I think 2017 has been given enough indications. Until 2016, the BJP and the Modi government had this plausible deniability about Hindutva. We are not doing Ghar Wapsi, we are not doing the cow protection, etc. But in 2017, there'll be enough indication. It was the government which goaded the Supreme Court, for a daily trial on Babri Masjid. It was them who appointed Yogi Adityanath. I think Modi has increased his Hindutva symbolism this year. So I think that these two things we should expect: a lot of raids, corruption, arrests, and a lot more Hindutva.
Okay, well, I think we went from GDP growth rates to cows and throwing corrupt politicians in jail. So I think we'll probably call it an evening now. Thanks, everyone, for coming out.